Greetings and welcome to another lecture in comparative psychology. Now, this is going to be the last lecture of chapter 16, and it's kind of going to wrap things up a little bit. Scientists, researchers, we basically need to have a theory behind this. And play, like I said, is one of those things that we haven't really been studying for that long because they couldn't find a function, they couldn't find a purpose. And so researchers decided to sit down and try to think up, okay, so we have these different types of play. We have locomotor play, and we have object play, and we have social play. So what might be the function of all of these different types of play? And they came up with a statement that they figure pretty much covers it. That animals play to allow them to develop the physical and psychological skills to handle unexpected events in which they experience a loss of control. And this does seem to, it's practice, basically. It's practice for things that might happen to them in the future. It's practice for them to understand what's in their environment, what they can use it for. It's practice on how to deal with other individuals. So, yeah, basically what we're saying here is that this play does have a purpose. It does have a function. It's to work out how exactly different threats or different things might be dealt with in the future. And then when you think about that and you look at that, different animals that play and animals that don't play, most of the animals that play learn more of their behaviors than animals that don't. Animals that don't play are more likely, with their smaller brains and such, to run a lot on instinct and pre-programming. And so therefore they don't need to play. They either know how to deal with the situation or they don't, and playing wouldn't necessarily help them. But as animals become more and more sophisticated and their behavior becomes more and more sophisticated, it turns out that less and less of their behavior is pre-programmed. And with that less and less pre-programming, they have to learn more of it. And animals that learn behavior find play to be useful because it allows them to learn at their own speed, to learn before they run into the situation, to maybe come up with ideas on the best ways to hunt or to flee or to deal with a new environment without them actually being thrown into it and having to learn on the fly, as it were. So it helps them be able to deal with this loss of control and to deal with it well. So we have a function, we have a purpose, we have types of play. Let's talk a little bit about basically the biological underpinnings of play. What exactly might be going on here neurologically and hormonally in order to explain play? Well, it is interesting. I talked about play earlier as being kind of the opposite of aggression. Although in some ways it seems like play is practice for aggression. And indeed, interestingly enough, it turns out that testosterone, which seems to underlie a lot of aggression, also seems to underline play. Now, testosterone and estrogen are both sex hormones, and it turns out that they're relatively similar. It is possible, for instance, for testosterone to be changed into estrogen and vice versa. So it does appear, at least in rats, your book talks about a long study about how they looked at whether a lack of testosterone or when, or too much testosterone, what exactly is going on with play endocrinology. And they used rats because rats do a lot of playing. They're very playful creatures. And when they can be, anyway. Tame ones are. Can't speak too much for wild ones, but tame ones are definitely playful. So if you reduce testosterone or you reduce estrogen, either one, you tend to get less play in male rats. So maybe some of the endocrinological, yeah, you say that, underpinnings of behavior are the same for both aggression and for play. We've also found that these particular neurotransmitters, dopamine, serotonin, and norepinephrine, are also linked to play. And I will tell you right now, if you don't remember from your general psych or from your psychopathology, that these are also related to mood, specifically to happiness. At least in humans, the more serotonin, the more epinephrine, the happier. Dopamine, excess of dopamine causes a very pleasurable sensation. So all of these are linked. And it may simply be that more serotonin, more norepinephrine, more dopamine may be linked to being more likely to play. And by the way, we've also seen this in other animals. There are domesticated animals like dogs and such who, when they seem to be very, very nervous, their owners have basically put them on the same medication that humans take when they're depressed or when they're anxious. And it seems to make the dogs better. They don't show that anxious behavior. They seem to be more relaxed, which apparently is caused by increasing the serotonin and possibly norepinephrine. And that also makes them more likely to want to play and to be able to play. It turns out that dopamine may also increase anticipation of play. When rats know that play is coming, they get kind of excited, because they're like, oh, we're going to get to be able to play. This is great. And it appears that that goes along with a bit of an increase in dopamine as well. So while we talk about play as being something that is learned and such, like, it also has this biological, this endocrinological, and I just cannot say that, endocrinological and neurobiological bases as well that need to be considered.